All right, hey everybody, it's John here with the Eyepiece show. We are back for a part two here tonight on June 30th, just about local 11:30 p.m. time. And we are broadcasting. This is a live shot, folks, of Saturn. That's right, we are showing off here Saturn in the telescope. I'm using an 8-inch Smith screen with a 2 times Barlow, and it's a computerized mount, so we can track the sky as these objects move across the night sky for us. And I'm going to give you an idea of where we are in relationship to everything. I'm going to go ahead and switch to our fantastic Sky Safari app. There we are. So we are looking basically due south right now. So on the right, you'll see that there's Jupiter. You will go ahead more to the direct south there, and you will see, if you were looking outside, bright orange star. That is Antares in Scorpius. And now we're looking towards the Milky Way, and we're going to zoom in here to the bright star, which is actually Saturn. Now, if you were stepping up to the eyepiece of your telescope, you would have a much better view than probably what we're getting right now. And you would also probably go ahead and capture at least Titan, perhaps, in the field of view. So just kind of keep that in mind. You might be able to see some of the other moons there of Saturn as well. But let me go back to our live shot here. That is Saturn. So the light that you're seeing right now, as we are streaming live here on YouTube, left Saturn about 75 minutes ago, because Saturn is 75.27 light minutes away. That breaks down to a little over 9 astronomical units, or 1,353.9 million kilometers. No, I don't know the conversion there for miles, but you get the idea, right? Let's go back here to our description here. Of course, it's the 6th planet from the Sun, gas giant. And of course, the biggest draw here of Saturn is those fantastic rings. You can even see these in a pair of binoculars. I mean, if you were going outside and you can hold those binoculars, I would say probably 7x50s. If you were holding them really still, you would be able to tell that the star you're seeing ain't no star at all. It's got an elongation to it. And you can actually make out a little bit of that elongation. Of course, that's the rings. And really, if you were stepping up to a telescope, of course, you're going to have a much better view. Can't tell you how many times there's been oohs and ahs when we are doing outreach for Saturn. It's a big, big crowd pleaser, and for obvious reasons. It's the most unique planet out there, as far as I'm concerned. And those rings are tilted to us so that we can go ahead and get a real nice view. Saturn just basically passed opposition, by the way, on the 27th, I believe. Meaning that's when it's essentially, Earth is between the Sun and Saturn, in essence, there. If you can make out the separation in the rings there, that's called the Cassini Division. Because Cassini was the first person that actually captured that in the eyepiece. Again, you'll see in the background here on the broadcast, this is Sky Safari. This is a great program. You can get it for Android, iOS, and Mac. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to pick it up here, but I want you to note the image there to the left. Of course, telescopically, we wouldn't be able to pick that up. I mean, if we were at the eyepiece, we might be able to see if it was really good seeing, if we were using a really good quality telescope. You might actually be able to crank up the power enough and see storms that are present on Saturn. They don't happen that often, but back in 2011, this huge storm that you're seeing the image there on the left was captured by the Cassini probe spacecraft as it was orbiting the planet. Back in, I believe, April just of 2018, there was another small storm just below the polar vortex, I believe, region there of Saturn. But I believe it kind of appeared and then disappeared relatively quickly. I don't know if any normal backyard stargazers perhaps captured it. You know, some nice planetary imagers such as Damian Peach, Christopher Go, no doubt they probably captured it, but I do not believe that it's currently visible and thus has faded out. This is a live shot for Saturn. We're using relatively modest equipment, to be honest with you. I mean, in the world of amateur astronomy, you can really get quite advanced out there. My equipment's pretty modest, to be honest. An 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain made by Celestron, a color camera that I bought off of Amazon for probably 180 bucks. What we call a Barlow Lens, that is increasing the focal length or increasing the magnification basically of what we're seeing, so we get a slightly bigger image here of Saturn. You can actually, and I just noticed this here, you can actually make out a little bit of the banding on Saturn as well. Just above the rings there, you'll see that it's just a lighter cream color, and then there's almost a darker band there, and then it goes back to more of a darker cream, and then right when you get to the North Polar region there, it gets a noticeably different color as well, so that's pretty cool. Now you might see some dots here and there. That's actually little dust motes on the optics, so don't worry about that. That's not aliens on Saturn, trust me. Now, I don't think that this worked the last time, the last broadcast I did, which was the Sky Safari app. And I wanted to go ahead and play the little audio there. The audio is an addition in version 5 with the Sky Safari app. It's brought to the Sky Safari program, I think, by the fine folks at Celestron there, because you can see Celestron audio in the lower left there. Yeah, so let me do this. And let me see if this will now go ahead and allow you to hear the audio on the channel.
Should the Sky ever get a list of the greatest hits, Saturn will forever top the charts. Its wonderful ring, a tiny perfect copy of everyone's dreams and fancies at last made real at the eyepiece, never fails to amaze and to bring awe to the observer. Saturn and its enigmatic ring are the most recognizable image, spelling space and stars. It's surprising how popular the ring motif is, since it was slow in being accepted, and there is no earthly reality, no model of a similar thing to be found outside of the sky. No flower is encased with a perfect loop that does not touch its center at any point. No landform or manufactured item was ever seen like the ring around Saturn. Saturn is one of the original wandering stars of the ancients. To wander, in Greek, is the root of the English word planet, and so they were named. Planets move about a special region called the ecliptic, and Saturn takes the longest of any naked eye planet to make the circuit. It spends 29.5 years going once around this path. Since Saturn moves more slowly, in folklore and myth it was identified with the slow-moving, the lead-like personality, and the overly leisured. In astrology, those born under the influence of Saturn would be wooden and hard to move. The word Saturnine means gloomy and dull. Those born under a fast-moving planet, Mercury, for example, would be mercurial or quick and impulsive, fast off the mark. Saturn appears as a reasonably bright star-like body, leisurely moving through the zodiac. It is only as bright as 15 or 20 other stars in the sky, and therefore the beginner can often get mixed up as to which sky object is Saturn. 3 clues are employed to tell. First, its color is a shade of sunlight reflected from a great distance. It's a dull yellow. Not many stars have the same hue. Secondly, planets tend not to twinkle as much as the stars. Finally, the best test is that it moves slowly. Watch.
All right, well, that audio worked through that great program called Sky Safari Pro version 5, so that's a good little test here. I think I want to brighten up the image a bit for us. Let's do that. Just, oops, too much. Don't want to blow it out. There we go. I think that's pretty nice. So one thing I want to emphasize here, don't think that you need a fancy telescope, a go-to mount, this fancy camera, and all this other stuff that I got going on here. This is to permit me to share the view with you and others online. All you need is a telescope and, well, a little quick finder chart. And I'm telling you, you can see Saturn very similar to this if you get a good quality telescope, good eyepiece, you're set. And even with a modest instrument, when I say modest, let's say something in the 60 millimeter, 3-inch to say 4-inch range, you're still going to be able to see Saturn. You're still going to be able to see the rings. And on nights of good seeing, I'm betting you're still going to be able to see these Cassini divisions. So isn't that fascinating? That's awesome. You can go right out in your backyard and see Saturn. The great thing, too, about planets, don't forget, as amateur astronomers, we have to always fight this thing called light pollution. All right, you go to a mall, you go to a big city, you're not going to see stars. You're going to see the planets, of course, you're going to see the moon, but you're going to see very few stars. That's what light pollution does. It washes out all these little faint fuzzies, as we call it in the amateur astronomer world, and doesn't really permit you to see them unless you do some other things. Get a really big telescope, or, of course, you get a camera and you do some other things. But the great thing about planets, and there's a variety of other objects too, but we're going to stick with this. Planets are pretty easy to see with any telescope from any location. We got Saturn here, obviously at the Eyepiece. We've had Jupiter here just a little while ago, in fact, so don't forget to check out that video once you're done if you happen to be catching the stream live. And right now we have Mars that is rising up. It's relatively close to the moon. In fact, let's go back to our star chart program here. And we will show you where we're looking again, just so that you can get your bearing. We're going to zoom out here. That box basically represents the telescope, by the way, so you're just to get an idea. Let me do a quick little, I'll line the box basically on that. So let's zoom out of here. Okay. So if you were basically facing south, Saturn is the brightest object probably in that area, besides a nice big old red giant called Antares over there to the right. This one that I'm clicking up on, it's not clicking on it here. There we go. Antares. But we are looking at Saturn right over here. So facing due south. And let's see, I would probably say if you put your fist out and hold the bottom of your fist at the horizon, and go ahead and then put one fist on top of the other. That's how you estimate altitude, basically, and that's, I think that represents about 10 degrees. So your fist held out at about arm's length, I believe, is about 10 degrees in relation to the horizon. So if you do that, you hold it out, you put the bottom about, even with your horizon, put your other fist on top, put the other fist on top. You're going to come out about 3 fists, and that's about 30 degrees above the horizon, and that's Saturn. Now you obviously will notice, depending upon your horizon, you're going to see the moon. Got a pretty big full, well, it's not full, but it just passed full, I believe Thursday, maybe Wednesday. Wednesday or Thursday, I think it was full moon. And so it's pretty bright right now. And below that, you are definitely going to see another very orange-ish, dark orange star, but that's not a star at all. That's Mars. And we've got a great opportunity to view Mars coming up in July. I mean, every single day, every single week, Mars is going to get higher and higher for you. And in the end of July, which I think is the 30th, no, I'll have to double check that. It's either July 27th, I think, is opposition for Mars, basically when the Earth is between Mars and the Sun. So it's a good viewing opportunity. Same deal with Mars as anything else, but I will tell you, generally speaking, Mars is pretty small in the eyepiece. It's a much smaller planet than the gas giants, right? It's a rocky planet, just like Earth. So it's going to be small, but still worthwhile to get in the eyepiece of a telescope, because right now, at the end of July here, it's going to be the best viewing opportunity that it has been since about 2003. It's going to be relatively close to Earth at the time of opposition. So it's very good prime time for observing. You're going to see a lot of articles coming out, what you actually already have. If you subscribe to, periodicals like Sky and Telescope or Astronomy Magazine, you're going to see probably right there on the cover all this talk about Mars. So that's why it's going to be getting a lot of press. It's going to be a lot of space and astronomy-based sites because of this opposition. It's going to be prime observing. Now, again, don't think that the universe kind of sits still. Everything kind of changes out there. Mars right now has a dust storm going on with it, and that's kind of unfortunate because you can't see the dark surface detail, these darker features, the albedo features we call it, that you can really pick out telescopically because, well, the dust throws up dust. It blocks the surface details from being visible. So I'm hoping that this dust storm will not impact observing as much as it has before. I think it was 2001 that I recall a planet-wide dust storm pretty much wiped out the view of Mars at that opposition. But we lucked out back in 2003, and it was pretty darn good on 2003. So let's go back to our view here. And there we go. That is our live view. Once again, this is a live view from the telescope. Added a few things here.
Stars in the sky, and therefore the beginner can often get mixed up as to which sky object is Saturn.
You're still going to be able to see Saturn. All right, so I'm just checking my audio feed there. Just needed to get some things out on social media on the feeds there. That's going to be confusing probably some people when they come on board and they see Mars on the right. I'm sorry, on the left. Doing. Boy, I got to get out and start doing this again live, like actually getting a telescope out. Oh, this is a nickel. Because I miss doing that. I will have to admit, this is very convenient. Be able to go out on the observatory and open it up and kind of broadcast like this. In addition, by the way, to YouTube Live, I do bounce back and forth between YouTube Live and a channel or a website called Night Skies Network. On there, I do also have a channel. Many other people have a channel, but my channel is called, of course, At the Eyepiece. So from time to time, I usually like to do like dark sky stuff on Night Skies Network. But I'm kind of playing around exploring the streaming opportunities that exist out there to popularize astronomy. This is just one way to do it. Now, the reason that you're seeing, if you're new to astronomy, telescopes in general, the reason that you're seeing the reason you're seeing Saturn, we have Saturn now, shake so much is that's the atmosphere. Okay, whenever you're out on a clear, starry night, and you look up and you see the stars kind of twinkle, well, as an astronomer, you don't really want to see the stars twinkling because that means the atmosphere above you is pretty turbulent. And when it's turbulent, what we call the seeing is bad. Now, tonight, this particular view of Saturn really isn't bouncing around too much. I would say with that, for Middle Tennessee area, this is probably average seeing. Maybe slightly better than average actually seeing. If you go to places like Florida is renowned for some of the seeing because, after all, it is a peninsula, so it doesn't get a whole lot of jet stream activity and turbulence, etc., unless you have a thunderstorm going through. But they generally have, better seeing conditions there. But it really just depends. Some areas are more prone to better seeing conditions than others. But sometimes you luck out. I've had very good seeing here. You just have to make sure that you get out every opportunity that you can at the eyepiece because you never know what really can happen. You might have an excellent night of seeing and you might be able to see some more detail that you have never been able to see before in your life. You might notice the picture on the left as I'm scrolling through on the Sky Safari application with the images of Saturn, and it looks very different because of the tilt and the rings. Well, the rings do actually, I'm trying to think of the year that it was. Let's see. Well, actually, the text says that it occurs every 14.7 years that the Earth crosses basically the ring plane. I've been doing astronomy for quite some time, and I have actually seen that phenomenon, and actually twice, I guess now. And it's pretty cool to be able to see Saturn basically without the rings. Just because those rings, you got to realize those rings are really thin in comparison, of course, to the planet itself. And when we're edge onto that, it's very difficult to see. You would need, in fact, I remember it was back in Palm Beach with the Palm Beach Astronomical Society. I had just purchased this scope, so it had to have been about 1994, maybe 93. And I had taken it as a show and tell kind of thing. And this other gentleman brought a 6-inch astrophysics refractor. Now, if you're an astronomy buff, then you know that type of equipment is really up there as far as craftsmanship, precision, price, everything, right? And we took the telescopes outside after the presentation to the club, and we set it out. And I recall in my 8-inch telescope, you could see a fuzzy bar in and out in the seeing across the disk of Saturn. In his refractor, it was as if somebody took a inkjet or an ink pen and drew a line across Saturn. It was so crisp. There was no fluttering. There was no... It was just right there, crisp and clear, every single moment. And well, that's what you get when you're talking about a big old chunk of glass like a refractor. Again, this is Saturn Live, broadcasting from Middle Tennessee. Always like to share the wonders of our universe as often as we can, weather permitting, right here at the Eyepiece. I would really appreciate it if you spread the word. Go ahead and hit that little bell there to subscribe to the channel if you had not already done so. I would really appreciate it, because the more people that we can get to see these things, the more possibilities that you have, if you have not started out in amateur astronomy, to get going. So hopefully we give you some good pointers and good information so that you can get into astronomy and see these things for yourself, right from your backyard or wherever you might be observing from. I will say one of the recommendations, if you are not into astronomy yet, but it's been something that you've always been wanting to get into, I would recommend don't doing what I did, but actually go ahead and find a local astronomy club and attend one of their meetings, chat it up maybe before the meeting, get to know the president or whomever is there representing the club from, you know, the higher up type of position. Talk to maybe some other members and see if you can be out there during their next public star party, because that's the opportunity for you to see probably a wide variety of telescopes and equipment, because believe me, there's a wide variety out there. and for you to ask questions, because I'll tell you, we love to go ahead and have people out there ask questions, and we love to help them out. At least that's my position, and that has been pretty much the position of every club that I've been a member of. So don't be afraid to ask those questions and look up those clubs or organizations in your local area. And like I was talking about earlier, most folks probably have access to a pair of binoculars. If you were to go outside right now with your binoculars and look directly south, about 30 degrees above the horizon, that bright, quote, star is actually Saturn. Now, if you were able to hold your binoculars still enough, you were probably going to see, even with a modest pair of, say, 7 by 50 binoculars, you're probably going to be able to still see that that's not a star. It's an elongated dot. Definitely, you can also see the disk itself, too. It's going to be tiny, but you know you're looking at Saturn, and you know you're looking at it with a pair of binoculars, right? How cool is that? Now, if you squeeze on over to the, well, let's see, how far is Jupiter there? Yeah, Jupiter is approaching the southwest here. Let me go back to our Sky Safari app. Let me get rid of that just for a moment. So we're looking towards the southwest. You see Jupiter there. And remember, if you were to look through even a pair of modest binoculars, if you were to look up at Jupiter, you would be able to see, obviously, that it was a star, but you would also be able to see these 4 Galilean moons: Io, Europa, Callisto, and Ganymede. You might even be able to see the cloud bands themselves, the 2 prominent bands at least. And again, that is with a pair of binoculars. You go out at, say, well, it gets dark, maybe 10 o'clock. Check out Jupiter at 10 o'clock, right? Observe it for a while. Come back out an hour later and note the positions of the moons, even from a standpoint of just an hour after you previously observed it. You can literally see the universe in action with the moons of Jupiter revolving around. But let's get back to Saturn, because that's what really we're showcasing tonight, at least on this part of the episode. So there's Saturn back. Let's increase. I don't know why it seems like it's getting a bit darker to me. Let's brighten it up just a tad. So if you look closely there, you're able to see some banding on the Saturn. Definitely a lighter band, just pretty much right above the ring itself there. Right about at the equator, if you will, of Saturn, a brighter band. Then you have a darker band, and it goes back to a normalized color. And then as you get closer to the North Polar region there, it's even a different hue to it. The separation, by the way, or that line in the rings themselves there, that's called the Cassini Division. There's a number of divisions actually in the rings. Telescopically, if you were out there at the Eyepiece and you had really good seeing with some pretty good optics, you would be able to make out possibly what's called the Encke Division. And that is a good challenge at the Eyepiece to get. I think I observed that one time, maybe twice, 1 or 2 times at least. All right, I'm going to stop yapping for a while, turn this air on out here, and get a little bit cooled off because, oh boy, it's getting warm. just checking out our data on Mars as it is rising in the east, but it's only about 20 degrees above our horizon, so I mean that's really low right now. I was contemplating on whether or not we were going to scoot on over to Mars and check it out, but I really don't know if it'll be worthwhile at that low of an altitude. So for now, continue to enjoy our live view of Saturn, the ringed planet, here at the Eyepiece.